So imagine this situation. You get up in the morning, you take a shower, if you're a man, you shave. If you're a woman, maybe you put on your makeup. You spend all morning making your hair look good, picking the perfect outfit, dressing up, picking the perfect shoes, putting yourself all together so you look great, spending a lot of time in front of the mirror so you look great. You go out into the world, you get to the office, and someone says to you, "Hey, you look great today. What a great outfit. You're looking great." And what do you say? You say, "Oh, no. This thing, no, I don't look so good at all. I just threw all this together." So why do we do that? Why do we have such a hard time accepting compliments? In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to accept a compliment graciously. And I'm also going to talk about why it's so hard to accept a compliment and why we're so tempted to actually refuse compliments and deny them and deflect them. I'm Bruce Lambert from HowCommunicationWorks.com. This is a channel where I teach you about communication skills so that you can improve your relationships and succeed at work and be more confident. Let's get started. On the surface, our response to compliments seems really puzzling because people are saying something nice to us. Why don't we just accept it? Why don't we just say thank you? In fact, I think I'll preview the end of the video. I think the most gracious way to respond to a compliment is simply by saying thank you. Thank you, or that's very kind of you to say. Something like that. That's the most gracious way to accept a compliment. Why is it so hard for us to do that? We can imagine that when people say mean things about us, when people criticize us, that would be really difficult. Like responding to criticism is I think, really hard, and we can understand why it's really hard. It's directly face-threatening, and our identity is at stake. People are being mean to us. That's hard. But why, when people are being kind to us, saying nice things about us, why do we have such difficulty then? That's what this video is about. And I think there's one main reason why compliments are so difficult to respond to. And this comes from the work of a communication scholar at University of Albany named Anita Pomerantz, who years ago wrote a paper about compliment responses, which I'm basing this video on. So Anita Pomerantz says that when we respond to a compliment, we're stuck because there are two competing goals that we're faced with. And these are contradictory goals. On the one hand, compliments are a kind of offer that demands, the sort of structurally and ordinarily demands an agreement. So when people make us offers or invitations, we tend to be, there's social pressure on us to agree. So that's the one goal, agree with a kind of positive offer, and a compliment is a kind of offer. So there's pressure to agree. But then there's a contradictory and competing goal, which is do not engage in self-praise, or do not be immodest or conceited or arrogant. So these two things run directly into each other. On the one hand, there's a structural preference for agreement. That is, there's social pressure to agree to an offer like a compliment. And then there's this other social pressure not to engage in self-praise. So what are we going to do? This is what makes responding to compliments so hard, because we want to agree and we want to avoid self-praise, and we don't know how to do both at the same time. So as a result, we get all these unusual forms of responses to compliments. And I'm going to put transcripts from Anita Pomerantz's article up on the screen so we can look at some of these typical responses to compliments. So one of the first, other than the thank you very much, which I think is the most gracious way of responding to a compliment, just say thank you, very kind of you to say, etc. We get these unusual responses as people try to respond to the two simultaneous pressures that compliments put us under. So let's go to the screen right now and we'll look at a couple of these transcripts. One of the first ways that people choose to respond to compliments and to respond to these two competing pressures is to do what Pomerantz calls a praise downgrade. That is, somebody praises us for something, and then we repeat the praise, but in a more modest way. This is a way of accepting the compliment, but showing people that we don't want to engage in too much self-praise. So by downgrading the thing that people are complimenting us about. So if we look on the screen here, some examples. The first person says, "I've been offered a full scholarship at Berkeley and UCLA." And the second person says, "That's fantastic." So there's the compliment. And the second person says, "Oh, isn't that good?" So they downgrade the praise from "that's fantastic" to "isn't that good." So this shows modesty and a reluctance to engage in self-praise. And the second example, "Oh, it was just beautiful." "Well, thank you. I thought it was quite nice." So someone gives the first compliment, "Oh, it was just beautiful," in regard to a performance or something. And then the person receiving the compliment says, "Well, thank you." So they actually accept the compliment. "I thought it was quite nice." So we go from beautiful to quite nice. This is a praise downgrade. And it shows that we're accepting the compliment, but we are also dramatizing that we're unwilling to engage in too much self-praise by downgrading the compliment to a lesser form of compliment. Another common way of responding to this double bind pressure that compliments put us in is simply to disagree. Even though there's structural preference for agreement to offers like compliments, sometimes the norm against self-praise is so strong that we just won't agree with a compliment. And I'll put up some transcripts on the screen now that we can look at to see examples of this. So the first person says, "Gee, hun, you look nice in that dress." And the recipient says, "Do you really think so? It's just a rag my sister gave me." I think this is one of the most common ways that we respond to compliments about the way we look, is again to disagree and to denigrate the thing that's been praised. And this is a way of sort of showing our humility. There's another example. "You did a great job cleaning up the house." "Well, I guess you haven't seen the kids' room." So someone wants to compliment us for cleaning up the house, and then we disagree and say, "Well, we really didn't do a very good job at all. You didn't see this other room that I didn't clean." So these are disagreements, and you see these all the time. And if you ever wondered why we are doing this, it's because we feel the pressure not to engage in self-praise or conceit or arrogance or something like that. Yet another strategy we use to avoid engaging in self-praise is to change the reference of the compliment to something other than ourselves. So someone compliments us, and then we shift the focus to something other than us. And this is again a way of dramatizing our modesty and our reluctance to engage in self-praise. So I'm going to put an example up on the screen right now. Let's have a look at it. So the first person, R, says, "You're a good rower, honey." And J says, "Well, these are very easy to row, very light." So they shift the reference from themselves as a good rower to the fact that it's really about the boat. It's not about the rower. So this is shifting the reference as a way of dramatizing our modesty and our reluctance to engage in self-praise. Here's another example. This is in reference to a tapestry that's been woven by the person receiving the compliment. So the first speaker says, "That's beautiful. Isn't that nice?" "Yeah, it really is." And then the recipient of the compliment says, "It wove itself once it was set up." This is a way of shifting the reference from ourself to other to dramatize our modesty. And one final way that we respond to compliments is, it's another way of shifting the reference, is we just return the compliment. So someone compliments us, and rather than accepting the compliment or disagreeing, we simply return the compliment in kind. So let's look at the screen now, and we'll show you a couple of examples of this. So here's the first one. "You sound real nice." And the recipient says, "Yeah, you sound real good too." So there's a simple return of the compliment. Or someone says, "You're looking good." The person says, "Great, so are you." These are just returns of compliment. They're ways of shifting the reference from self to something other than self. They dramatize modesty. They allow us to obey this social constraint against self-praise. And they solve that problem for us. So those are some examples of why compliments are so difficult to respond to. They put us in a jam between being forced to agree with someone who makes us a generous offer, like a compliment, and being forced not to engage in self-praise. We're put in a double bind, hence the awkwardness many of us feel when we're trying to respond to a compliment. So each of these gives you some options. If you struggle on how to respond to a compliment, you can shift the reference, you can engage in this downgrade of the praise. When someone says something that is totally wonderful, you say, "Oh, it's very nice." Or you can return the compliment. Those are three basic strategies. Or you can disagree, say, "Oh no, this old thing." Those are strategies. I think from the point of view of being gracious, the best way to accept a compliment is simply to say thank you. And I sometimes will say something like, "Thank you. It's very kind of you to say so." So this is a slight shifting of the reference back to the other person as well. It's different from returning the compliment. Or I guess it is returning the compliment in another way, but that tends to be the pattern that I try to use when someone compliments me. I say, "Thank you very much." And this allows me to accept that, and it also increases my confidence and feeling good about myself. And then I say something like, very kind of you to say so, which shifts the reference back a little bit. So that's my advice about accepting compliments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, go on over to howcommunicationworks.com, sign up for our mailing list, check out our one-on-one coaching offer, download our ebook about empathy, and read all the other blog entries about politeness and face saving and persuasion, all these other topics that we've written about on the blog. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.